we're going into our next brew. It is by Noble Beast, the Imperial Cookies, Milk, and Stout. Mike, take it over.
This one's inspired by the kitchen sink cookie. Easy drinking Russian Imperial. Stout brewed with chocolate, cherries, vanilla, pecans, pretzels, oats, milk sugar. Light touch creates a balanced stout with aromas of chocolate and toasted nuts. The oats and vanilla impart a creamy mouthfeel, while the cherries lend a touch of tart acidity to the finish. I visited the bar and they garnished it with a chocolate chip cookie. I highly recommend going there. They don't sell in bottles, but they're happy to fill a growler for you. This has a 10.1% ABV and a 60 IBU.
Mike's trying to get us tanked.
Right.
I like Noble Beast. That's your place, isn't it?
This is my place. Yeah.
Dude, so far, everything you've brought back from Noble Beast has been phenomenal. I won't lie. And smelling this, right, tip it off. Oh, my Lord. Yeah. Smelling this, I feel like I'm next to the Christmas tree on Christmas Eve. I mean, I am Santa Claus snacking on cookies right now. Do you smell that? Do you smell that? That just smells amazing.
I can taste the oatmeal first thing.
Oh, man.
Some ginger.
Yeah, I like
Right off the rip.
Oh, that tastes delicious. Oh, man. Everything's right there.
It's really good.
That's Christmas night.
I was really happy with this one.
Really good.
I know.
And it's not the beer talking.
I know what I'll be
Actually,
sipping
it is.
on when I'm wrapping presents.
It reminds me of, what is that one we like? Hogarden?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't
yeah.
it remind you of that?
Yeah.
Without the citrus, because Hogarth, I believe, that has like a
It did have more citrus.
grapefruity.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just, it's like eating a really good cookie while sipping on a beer.
Yeah, the cherries though kind of threw me at first because you can I taste a hint of the cherry.
I'm looking for the cherry right now.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like a chocolate covered cherry to me.
This is,
That's so
this
good.
is 10 point something?
10.1.
Smooth, right?
Wow, you don't. Yeah, that's
and
that's dangerous.
And it scores high on the IBU, and I'm not getting
I don't
that.
get it, no. I don't get that at all. It's way smoother.
Right, yeah. It's
It's way smoother.
definitely more of an amber.
Beautiful color. Yeah.
The color's lovely. It's almost like a dark walnut. Yeah, and it's not too much head, which is fine. You know, I can go with or without. You know, but it's the aromas. The aromas caught me right off the bat.
It's beautiful. It's like 5W30.
Mike, you'll have to join us one night.
I will. My coffee's out, so I feel kind of sad, but it's okay.
He's like hitting his coffee cup. It was stupid coffee.
Yeah.
So now we're going into your specialty.
What's that?
Salvation under the Orthodox Church.
Oh, okay.
So I found a really cool article from orthochristian.com.
Okay.
And I'm not going to read through it. So I literally just went through and grabbed the headings on each one of the subjects because it was a very in-depth article. It would take me probably the next half hour to read. It's a really in-depth article. So under the headings, we have personal salvation is the restoration of our original communion with God. Everyone is called to salvation. Personal salvation is a process. The essence and the goal of personal salvation is deification, which is theosis. We'll come back to that one. Personal salvation is both in the future and now. Faith is a starting point of one's personal salvation. Repentance is a necessary condition of one's personal salvation. Baptism is the gateway on one's path to salvation. Personal salvation requires a sustained effort even after baptism. Personal salvation is acquired through fulfilling Christ's commandments. God does not force salvation on anyone, but assists those who choose it. No one can ever be assured of salvation. Salvation is possible only in the church. Christ's life on earth is an example of personal salvation for us to follow. So, how do you feel about that?
Sounds orthodox.
But the thing I really like about that, right from the get-go, it's more open. It's more personal. It's right from the get-go, you have personal salvation is the restoration of our original communion with God. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Right. I think, yeah, because when we think about salvation within Eastern churches, and I would add that the Byzantine Catholics would hold the same understanding of salvation, that it is a process, and it's something that you got to kind of back up a little bit and start by even asking the question, what is prayer? And prayer is something in Orthodoxy that God is eternally present, so it's us. We're the one that has to, in a sense, find the radio station that God's operating at, the frequency God's at. It's not that, all of a sudden we pray and God's like, oh, I'm sorry, what? I was asleep. God's eternally present, so we have to tune our spirit to him. And theosis is a process where we're eternally divinized. And what that means is that the divine spark that's in all of us, the thing that draws us towards God from birth. Even we would say that people that aren't Christians, but all religions have had this kind of sense of something else, something bigger. That's the divine spark within the human person. So taking that spark that's within us, and then through the process of the church, through the process of prayer, repentance, fasting, and the sacraments or the holy mysteries, you become united with the person of Christ, and by becoming more united with Christ, you become more united with the Trinity.
Now,
so it's definitely a both and. There's definitely something where you have to, it's a conscious decision to decide to pray with God. You pray without ceasing. You use, your chotki would be the Orthodox rosary, to use a poor analogy that Orthodoxy probably doesn't like, but it's essentially that idea. That you will pray you will pray your chotki, you will say the Jesus prayer, and at some point, and this is even true within a lot of my friends in the evangelical churches, we stop praying. The prayer no longer becomes something we say, it becomes something that we are. The Holy Spirit, like Paul says, groans within us. So prayer becomes our natural nature, so that there's no longer this moment where we're like, okay, am I praying, am I not praying? No, your entire life becomes a prayer, because you realize that all reality is mystical. And I think the other side of it is a very basic idea of, and stop me if I'm starting to preach here.
No, please. I'm loving it.
We have this idea that we have to somehow win, but Christ already won on the cross. It's done. The kingdom of God, in a sense, has already occurred. It's just us. We don't know that it's happened. Humanity hasn't accepted the gift that's already occurred. So the church is very much here to say, look, it's already done. Just come together. Let's let God reign. There is no more real battle going on, in the sense that it's not a yin and a yang. It's not this, God and the devil. No, it's all God or Jesus already won. The devil already lost. So it's our job to mystically and prayerfully and thoughtfully allow ourselves to become sanctified and glorified in Christ. And because God is eternal, the process does start here, but it doesn't end when you die. It doesn't end when you get into heaven, because God's eternal. So the process of us growing is always going to be happening for eternity as well, because we'll never reach the end of God, because God has no end.
That's awesome. See, I love that. It's an eternal journey. I mean, there was I listened to, for those who know me, I listen to motivational videos in the morning while I'm
surprised.
Right? While I'm showering and getting ready and stuff, I'm actually playing motivational videos in the background, because it's cool. It's uplifting while you're getting ready and everything to, set your goals in the morning, set your mind at its task. It's a beautiful thought to think that it's not just an earthly lifelong process, but that it's an eternal process. There's always something to keep moving towards. There's a path to keep walking. There's something to achieve forever. It's a beautiful, beautiful aspiration.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I like what you said about the Orthodox view about your life essentially becomes a life of prayer, not because you're on your knees praying with your eyes closed and your hands lifted, screaming, or even, like from the evangelical, there isn't a lot of tongues or whatever kind of things that we
some denominations have tongues, sure.
Yeah, that we exploit here. But that you realize, like you said, there's a sense of, I think you used the word mysticism.
Mhm.
Yeah, that all life and humanity has that sense that that somehow connects all of us.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like it's the resurrection that was the rest. It was the salvation, and I think a lot of churches would focus on the cross and the death.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in the way that kind of my training is, it's the death on the cross occurred and it was needed, but it was in the restoration, and when that happened,
Yeah.
the entire world got restored.
Yeah.
All
N.T.
of
Wright
reality
says
got
that.
restored.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So everything's divinized. Everything is, I'm not saying God is, it's not pantheism. But when you look at, like, have you guys ever read Bonaventure?
Can't say I have.
Never heard of it.
So after St. Francis and the Franciscans was a guy named Bonaventure, and Bonaventure was a contemporary of Thomas Aquinas.
Okay, love Thomas.
Yeah, and Bonaventure's theology, he wrote something called the Vestiges of God. And it's this idea that, if you want to understand art is the externalization of the internal person. It's the incommunicable that's becoming, external. So if you want to understand the mind of God, look at nature, because God has written himself and explored himself and revealed himself all throughout the world. So we don't have to go very far to find God, because God has literally created everything for us to see. So when you kind of look at that, and then it gets almost humbling to me, because when Moses was supposed to approach the bush, he had to take off his shoes.
Yeah.
And then you realize that all of the world's been, Christ literally walked on this earth. So I think that, at some point you could even do a show on eco-theology, and just how the entire world's been divinized.
Yeah.
And the world's a lot more mystical than I think we give it credit for.
You know we're going to bring
good
you in
point.
for that episode, right?
Okay.
So if that's the case, then let me ask you this.
Sure.
Are there other pathways outside of Christianity to the Creator, to having a relationship with the Creator?
Well, I think there's a difference between having a relationship with the Creator and then having salvation. I think those are separate things.
Well put.
Having a relationship with the Creator, I think we all by our now this is going to be kind of a different way of thinking about it. Some would say that when we're born in original sin, we don't have any relationship with God, that it's completely cut off, and that we're dead without that. Orthodoxy would say that there's always the divine spark is always within us, and it's within all people. But we also understand original sin differently. Original sin for Orthodoxy is death, and this is how we. You know how people have a fear of death?
Right.
Yeah. Orthodoxy, Eastern theology would say that the reason we all have this innate fear of death is because there's a part of us that knows we weren't supposed to die. And that when Adam and Eve sinned, it was the introduction of death into the world. And everybody this isn't right. There's something wrong about this. And it's that mystical relationship with God that makes us go, something's not right about death.
Wow.
So when Christ incarnated and then resurrected, he restored our ability to live for eternal life. That's why Mary, when we think of Mary having original sin, well, it wasn't in the sense of Roman of Protestant or Western theology, or it was in the idea that she fell asleep. She was the dormition of the Theotokos. She fell asleep.
Right.
That's what we say with death, is we just fall asleep.
No, I read a really good article on which place was it? It was on one of the sites. I don't know if it was Ortho Christian or if it was an OCA, but ancestral versus original sin. Mm-hmm. And the ancestral makes so much more sense than original sin. And I love the fact they pointed out that even in Judaism, they never believed in original sin. They believed in ancestral sin, that we were born into a world where death was introduced, but that we are not guilty for anybody else's sin but our own.
The guilt isn't something like, God looked at us and said, well, Adam and Eve messed up, therefore you messed up at the exact, you're guilty. I don't go get in trouble because my dad did something wrong.
Well, well, women are still paying the punishment for Eve.
Oh.
Right?
So I'm not touching that at all.
No?
I love that answer.
Yeah.
I love that answer.
That's the Orthodox answer.
But that the world, by the relationships that we have, the fact that we're relational beings, we're raised into a world that is sinful. We're raised into a world that, chooses different than God.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I love that. There's so much more. There's so much more room to grow, and so much more relational aspects, not just between people, but between people and even nature, inside of that view. Which, I mean, even look at the Bible, Romans 1:20, right? That the fact that it says that all of creation is here, therefore there is no excuse for any human being, right? So, I mean, all of creation rejoices. That's even in the Psalms. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a beautiful relationship between all of creation that pulls us together to look for our Creator, or to incline us to that relationship that we desire to have with Him. So I think it's beautiful. So, and it wasn't Athanasius who said that God became man so that man can become God, right?
Yes, essentially that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and I think we all have that in us. Yeah.
Yeah. That's essentially that does really sum up theosis, right? The fact that God Himself became incarnate as man, so that man could reach out to become divine, so that He could grow with the idea of becoming closer and closer to God, not just through here, but like you said, throughout eternity.
Yeah, and the reason it works within Orthodox theology is because they have an understanding of the Trinity that has the essence and energies of God, which is different than a Western understanding of the Trinity. So traditional Western theology doesn't have the energies of God. It's not that we become God as in Trinity. It's just the energies of the Trinity that emanate the world that is what unites us and illuminates us. So the other way of understanding theosis is divine illumination within the Eastern Church.
See, I love that. Can you expand on that, because that is awesome?
What's that, illumination?
Yeah, the energies of God and illumination.
Sure. So if you think in the Old Testament, Moses had to put a veil because his face lit up. I think it was Elijah when Jesus went on Mount Tabor. And it's this idea that when you reach a certain point of mysticism or theosis, you become illuminated. You light up in a sense, and not in a cheesy or generic way. If you ever read the story of Saint Seraphim of Sarov, you'll see that within his narrative, and I think it's absolutely possible. I think that the idea that the spiritual life has to really start once you pass away, I think, is erroneous. I think God is possible here. I think a relationship with Christ is possible here, and I think eternity is here now. We just have to walk into it.
See, that's awesome.
That's really good.
I love that.
You said something earlier about man has this innate fear of death because we realized innately that something is wrong with how I think how we're dying physically, and it wasn't meant to be this way. Is that what you meant? So what is the Orthodox view of how it was supposed to be before that?
Sure. So in the Garden of Eden, we just had this relationship with God. There wasn't the separation. We didn't have a knowledge of good and evil. So once the original sin occurred, once that relationship with God was broken, humanity, I think, kind of realized something was wrong. And if you ever read existential psychotherapy, somebody by the name of Irvin Yalom, one of the main existential concerns that people have nowadays is the fear of death. And even if you go into bioethics, when you look at physician-assisted suicide, the amount of people that get the prescription for physician-assisted suicide is a significantly different number than the amount of people that actually take the medicine. Because what you lose in that terminal illness is you lose your ability to make your own decisions. You lose your autonomy. So that actually gives meaning back to your life. The ability to say, you know what, I have the decision. I can choose when I'm going to die or not. So even that existentially ties into the idea of Orthodox theology and theosis, because there's this, if you look at some of these tragedies, and I don't care what religion you're from, you look at mass tragedies, there's something in all of us that groans, and it's something that, I don't care about your philosophies or wherever you're from, when you see pure suffering, something in the human person aches.
Yeah.
When you see somebody die, that it's just not, you can't even speak it.
Right.
I think all of these things are evidence that God is present in us, and I think that transcends everything. And I think that's where Orthodox theology kind of makes sense. Not that the other ones don't necessarily, but for me, you can look at it in that existential sense. And even one of the old monks in the Orthodox Church says that the reason we fall asleep is to prepare us for death. God did that so that every night we would die and then resurrect, so that when we actually do fall asleep at death, we won't be afraid anymore because we'll be used to it.
Wow. That is awesome. Actually, the last 5 minutes of what you just said would make a great book.
I don't have any, nobody wants to hear what I have to say.
You should really think about that. The last 5 minutes of what you said would be a fantastic book.
Oh, it's been written by smarter people than I. That's for sure.
I don't know if it was so aptly put.
Oh, probably it's much more eloquent than me.
I know George has a question.
Those are deep
I see it
thoughts.
brewing. I see it
No,
brewing.
they were coming and going. I was.
See, George actually works in the medical field. So
Okay.
Oh man, are you sure you just made that segue without even?
I did.
Yeah, we should preface that with he's our resident skeptic, and he's good.
Nice.
And he's good at it.
So in the medical field, how much of this are you seeing? Because you deal with because you're in facilities, so you see all of this going on at the same time. So what's your thoughts on that? And seeing the mortality of humans, and I mean,
It's a good question. So, were we supposed to die?
For a second. Yeah.
What's that?
Were we supposed to die? Let me set George up. Was man supposed to die?
No. Man was created to be immortal.
Right. And so just because Eve ate an apple, now we die. And
Well, it
women
wasn't
have
an apple, it was
experienced
a fruit.
birthing pains and periods. Right?
wait, hold on.
What's that?
He just said it wasn't even an apple. Okay, go ahead.
A fruit from a tree.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Now, let me preface that because there was a fantastic quote that I'll find for you.
I'm just saying it was arbitrary.
Right
He's like, hey, I
now.
made this world for you, but hey, here's this tree with this fruit that you're not allowed to
We
eat.
have to preface our preface.
But-
Hang on.
All right.
Even-
Sorry, let me understand the context.
Even C.S. Lewis stated,
Of course, C.S. Lewis, so wise.
dude, C.S. Lewis is awesome.
The beer is definitely talking right now. I'm sorry. Mike, I'm sorry.
You're good, sir.
Thank you.
No, C.S. Lewis is amazing. One of my favorite authors.
10%, Mike.
One of my favorite authors of all time. C.S. Lewis is perhaps one of the best philosophers in the last 200 years on the Christian side, at least.
Of course.
Maybe even the Taoist side, because he was also
even recognized beyond the
right.
Christian side. Yeah.
Because he was also a great Taoist philosopher as well. Even he stated that, and he acknowledged, by the way, theistic evolution. So, and he said that it doesn't matter if it was an actual fruit or not. It was just the fact that humans said that this is our part of the universe, and guess what? You have no say in it. And excluded God from creation itself from their own minds.
So you're saying that was the communication sent when she took the fruit?
What I'm saying, though, I'm saying our own egos
All right.
are what pushed God away.
Mm.
Our own egos are what says, this is our business, it's not yours.
If that's a personal dig, I just don't think it's my own ego that's pushing God away from me. Like, if anything, I think initially maybe it was my ego, and then since coming in communication with you guys and being like, you know what, hey, let's not be totally ignorant. Let's educate. You gave me the Bible. You said you gave me a recommendation on a Bible to read, and I just feel like it's not my ego anymore. It's just. And I have a hard time saying this in front of a doctor and very smart people, I don't know, the more I read this Bible, the more, I'll be honest, it's the opposite for me. The more I read this Bible, the more pulled away I really am.
That's natural, though. That's natural. I went through that myself, and mind you, and I'm a believer. I went through that.
I don't think there's any chance for me coming back around.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
Coming back around where?
I guess and then I was, back back when I was sober, Mike, and I was doing the questions. Sorry, I know.
Like an hour ago or what?
Right? Yeah. Just anyone at any time could just tell me to shut up and I'll stop. Okay, so back when I was coherent, Mike, and I was talking about, some of my skepticisms about, being born into a religion and inheriting in your parents' religion and stuff like that. Like I was definitely that was me, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Right, where I was born, baptized Catholic.
Wait, hold on. You were baptized Catholic?
Absolutely. And then I went to PRS or PSR. Booze talking. I went to PSR and then did the whole communion and all that jazz. And then it was later in life where I started kind of questioning things. And like now where I was challenged.
Okay.
And I don't know, not necessarily challenged, but given, hey, you know what, give it a shot, educate yourself, find out what it's about. And then, like, I don't know, I just find myself distancing myself more. I find myself with more questions. I find myself with opportunities or I'm reading this that's supposed to be the manual in life. I'm finding myself with situations that I find immoral. I find myself reading situations that I feel like me, a regular human, could perform better. And I find myself not connecting.
But is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so.
I appreciate that. I don't think a lot of people that are religious would feel that way.
Well,
But
I do.
George, do you think it's because you were raised?
it took me a couple of beers to get here. Here it is.
Do you think because the way you were raised and some of your family's education put into you, brainwashed into Christianity, let's say,
Okay.
then you start reading for yourself, and you start cleaving from all of that stuff that you just, was dumped into your head. You didn't have a question. Do you think there's any chance that you're about to discover the truth? Because your story sounds so familiar to mine, where I was raised Catholic. I decided to read the Bible from cover to cover without stopping. So I started reading, and I was getting pulled away. Next thing I knew, I was down to zero foundation and rebuilding it from the foundation on the biblical truth that I was discovering for myself rather than my parents, what they told me. And my mom, she's still, she's on her own journey, but she's still religious and probably more Catholic when we have lots of discussions, but I'm on my own 2 feet now, and I have my own thoughts about who God is. So I thought I knew who God was, but I didn't until I ripped every thought and preconceived notion out of my head and rebuilt it with biblical truth. So I was there.
Right?
I was too. And believe it or not, okay, so, and this is where it's gonna definitely turn a few heads. Apologetics is actually what tore me apart. Of defending the faith, apologetics from a Western point of view, from a Protestant point of view, because I started back in apologetics when I was in my pre-teens. I was probably 12 years old or less when we switched over to the assemblies, right? So I was young when we switched over. And going into my teens, and then my 20s, and my early 30s, I all of that, I was all Protestant. And I went into apologetics defending the faith. And even though I could adequately defend the faith quite well, their questions still tore at me. It just tore at me. And even after I won my debates, afterwards I'm still thinking, God, he was right. I won the debate, but it's still tearing at me because his question is still, searing through me like a hot flame. And, it still left me questioning myself. Even though I was winning the debates, I was still left wanting. I was still left, thinking he was very right in his question. Now this might help you, Mike, over there, new Mike. Believe it or not, it was the Eastern theology. It was the Orthodox faith that restored my faith, because Western theology couldn't do it. every time I went back to Western theology, there were so many different views on so many different topics, on so many different. Everybody had their own idea what was right. 40,000 flavors of it. That at the end of the day, I was like, something is wrong because I have 5 different answers every single night for the same question. And it seared through my flesh that I couldn't give everybody one answer. And it was a Serbian friend of mine. He was a coworker, and we said, funny story because we sat down and he just said, I'm from the church. And I'm like, well, what denomination? Are you Lutheran? Are you Pentecostal? Are you? And he's like, I don't know what you mean. I am from the church. That's right. So it was talking to him that I realized that Serbia is almost all Orthodox. Right? And when I started studying Orthodoxy after that, I started realizing that they pretty much all have the same answers. And the answers were so concise that it put my mind, my soul at ease because it took away a lot of those conflicting answers. And it made my faith that much simpler to understand. Instead of trying to define everything under a Western scientific view, it allowed me to put the spiritual side back into it, the beautiful mystical side back into it, and said, hey, you know what? Let God be God, because he's beyond quantum physics, right? He's beyond history, and let him be who he is.
He wasn't beyond quantum physics when he created the sun on the 3rd day.
Okay, I already have polemics listed as slide 31. I think
I don't know what that word means again.
Okay,
he was explaining it to me before we started, and I already forgot.
I already have it in there.
Okay.
I think it's slide 31.
Yeah.
So, let God be God, and let him be ministering to man as man evolves through time. Right? Let him minister to man as man evolves.
But you don't even subscribe to God, though, at this point. So at this point,
right?
We're swinging a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. Like, I mean, if God's chance to communicate with me is staring me right in the face, at least once a week, where I'm burning through Juice's Bible that he gave me, it's just not happening.
But is there any sense in you that feels like there's something that connects you to all humans as part of humanity? Like when Mike, our new Mike, Orthodox Mike, I'm going to call you Orthodox Mike.
I've been called worse.
when Orthodox Mike said, like, when you see human suffering, is there something that connects you to that, even though you may not know them from Adam or relate at all to them? Like, is there something
there's
that
a
connects?
moment, yes.
Okay. What do you call that?
I mean, I don't know would I call that God?
No, I mean, not even God, because you don't subscribe to that.
Empathy.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a human being, and I know what it's like to be happy and what it's like to feel pain. So I don't want other people to feel that. So
yeah.
But I don't need. I don't think I need the Bible to teach me that. I don't. Okay. I think that's something I already have.
See, but like Mike was saying earlier, from the Orthodox perspective,
2 10% beers, Mike.
We blame this on you, Donnie. You
know what? I think I'm just gonna keep drinking my coffee. You guys keep drinking. I keep getting smarter and smarter.
His IQ just went up 10 notches.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, from the Orthodox perspective, we all have the spark, like you said, right? See, so we all have the idea. We all have the spark. We all have the recognition of the greater consciousness, right? So,
yeah.
And I get it, George. Sometimes I don't even know how to define it. Like, there are some things that connect me to people way on the other side of the world that sometimes I don't even want to call myself personally growing up in the church as the evangelical God, because I've had my own, there's just been a bitter taste in my mouth with what I grew up with. So I don't want to call it that.
Right.
And yet I still don't know what it is that makes me like, man, is it just my humanity?
So you have empathy and like understanding towards other human beings, right? And then you're married.
Indeed.
All right, so you don't want gay people to get married?
What's that?
You don't want gays to get married?
Wait, hold on.
I blame Mike. I blame Mike
my
for
God.
10%.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm feeling empathy. I'm feeling empathy towards other human beings. I want them to experience the happiness
Mike
I
wants to.
Okay.
No, I'm just watching.
Did I just make it
Where's
my
my-
bill?
Okay.
But I'm ready for some popcorn or something.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So
This is where you tell me I need to read 6 other books
No,
and understand the
no,
context.
no.
Okay.
I believe it was made very, very simple.
It said man shall not layeth
Okay.
with another man.
I think this was made very, very simple. Okay. Christians can do as Christians want to do, and the state can do as the state wants to do.
They really should be separated.
Right, Mike? Is that what it comes down to?
What's that?
I mean, Christians can do. That's where the separation of church and state is, right? So, the church can allow what the church wishes to allow within its own parameters, and we're not going to regulate government. We're going to let government do what government wants to do, right? So that's
As long as the government follows God's law. I mean, if a government's okay with slavery, I'm not going to sit back.
Oh
and
no,
let
no,
that
no, not
happen.
that, not that.
Wasn't he cool with that though?
No. Oh boy. No.
That's right.
So
Context.
context. So no. So I mean, if the state wants to allow gay marriage, whatever, they can. I mean, who are we to tell them that they can't? However,
I know you're not going to tell the state, but you're going to tell the individuals.
Wait. However, the state should not tell the church who it can marry.
Okay.
All right, fair, right?
So ethically. All right. So we're just talking ethically now.
Okay.
All right. We're empathizing with other human beings.
All right.
We want them to experience the love. We want them to experience the same companionship that we experience,
Right.
right? That's something we're connected with all human beings,
Okay.
but not if it's a man with another man.
Okay.
I don't know. You know what, George? There was a guy I used to get my hair cut from lived in Lakewood. I had no idea about Lakewood, Ohio. I don't know if you're familiar with the city of Lakewood.
Not even close.
Okay.
San Francisco has a high population of gay couples. I
Okay.
think Lakewood, Ohio, per square capita has more. So
Okay. Per square what? Like
Capita.
mile?
yeah,
Per people.
Ratio.
Okay.
Yeah, ratio-wise.
So I had no idea when we moved there. You know, I was pretty much shocked when I moved there to see that. I just didn't know it was a whole new world to me. But anyways, the guy that cut my hair all the time, he
He was probably
gay.
a good dude.
He cut my hair great, and that's all that mattered to me. But anyways, we were talking one time, as we do all the time, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" And he found out you play, you do music at your church, and he's like, "Oh, you should come to my church and do that." And I remember feeling, like the bottom just dropped out of me. I'm like, "Your church?"
Right.
I'm like, I had, what church is that? And he went on to tell me what church he went to, and he was Christian. It that wasn't even in his mind, and I remember just being blown away. Especially from having my evangelical preconceptions about what gays should and shouldn't be, or whatever.
I mean, it's written right there in the Bible.
Yeah, it didn't matter to him. I mean, because I guess in his mind,
It'd be difficult. I know. I would. I guess I don't. I'm not in that situation, obviously, but I would find it incredibly difficult for someone in his position, in his lifestyle, to be able to subscribe to Christian Bible.
maybe. But what it did for me in that moment was it humbled me, because I had my judgments already, and I didn't realize how judgmental I was until I was confronted with that moment. Because there's a lot of other things in there that I could say, all right, well, then do I hold any person in the military, with those same judgments when God, when Jesus preaches about peace? How do I confront that issue?
That's a good one. You're just giving me ammunition now.
Right, or like
man.
or like women, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you. I hear you. I'm not fully reconciled with a lot of those things, and I think that's okay. I mean, I needed to know that it's okay to feel that way.
I'll take it, Gumby.
I mean,
Juice.
There is some room to open there for discussion. Have you ever heard of Sam Alberry?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I have
Okay.
not. Definitely not. That was absolutely no. That was
That's his uncle. What do you
Yeah, right. So Sam Alberry is actually a priest over in Europe, and he is same sex attracted. Okay, but he remains abstinent because he believes that it is God's purpose that the whole idea of sexuality is for procreation. And that if he doesn't have that attraction, he simply stays within God's rule, right? God's rule's the wrong word for it, but he stays within God's
I think
plan.
it was laws. Where
No,
I read it in
no.
the Bible. No,
You're going to the Old Testament
I thought it
again.
said laws.
You're going to the
Oh,
Old Testament
sorry.
again. He remains within God's allotted plans for his life, and he helps throughout the church. He actually has a station. He's a priest inside the church. But he remains abstinent within God's church, and he still fulfills.
Yeah, well, I feel awful because you can't have companionship.
But he does.
How long have you been married?
He does.
What's that?
He
How
does.
long have you been married?
3 years.
Right.
You wait. See if you still think that's companionship.
Oh, snap. I mean, it's a stereotypical joke, though. I'm talking. Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you equate that to sexuality. It doesn't have to be sexuality. You're calling
I'm talking companionship.
companionship doesn't have to be sexual.
I'm not talking about sexual. You're talking about sexual. I'm talking about companionship.
So,
I want him with someone happy.
but that's just
Someone
it, though. He is very, very happy.
No, he's not.
He is.
No, he's not. Is he married?
Have you talked to him?
I would talk to him, and I would say there's probably some piece of him. I guess. Right. Hold on. Sober George back in place. I don't know him, and
Okay.
I don't know how he thinks.
Okay. There is a higher
I
calling.
would imagine, again, if going back to my original argument of wanting to empathize and understand other people
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with other people,
Okay.
I would imagine on that
Okay.
note, I would imagine other people would also, strong majority of people would want to be in a
Okay.
committed relationship, would want that companionship, would want to marry somebody that is going to be their partner for the rest of his life. And so for that man to not have that available to him,
Mhm.
I would imagine that would leave a part of him empty, a piece of him disappointed and upset and hurt. And that disconnects me.
See, even as a single male, I have to disagree. And mind you, I'm
Did you say
opposite.
single male?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Even when I was a single
okay.
male, I'm sorry.
I'm telling Kendra.
right. No, even when I was a single male, I have to disagree because I wasn't the stereotypical male. I wasn't out to just get tail. Okay. I was looking for a relationship because
As is your buddy?
I wanted a relationship.
Yeah. And they
But
don't think
I
your friend
reached a point. Hold on. Let me finish. I reached a point where I didn't care if I was in a relationship because I'd already been through a couple bad ones. All right. And I was perfectly.
Well, you at least had the experience and you could try it firsthand. He don't.
Hold on. I was perfectly happy being on my own. I was happy. I was fine. I didn't need it. I was fine and I was happy. So if you feel like you are fulfilling a higher calling, you don't need sexuality. We shouldn't define ourselves.
I don't want to talk about sexuality. I'm talking about love and companionship. We keep going back there. I want him to experience
it's not
love.
needed. It's not needed. So even at a higher calling, I'm going to say that you are degenerating the human being down to a lower level when you say that he needs a sexual companion.
Oh, why do we?
It's a higher calling.
I'm not saying sexual.
But you're saying
I'm companionship.
romantic.
Love, companionship.
But I mean, I love these guys. You know,
Right,
like,
exactly.
What I don't.
Yeah. You love these guys, but they're
Right.
not your wife. These guys don't know about you what your wife knows about you. These guys aren't supporting you like your wife's going to support you. They're not. I want this man that Juice is talking about, I want him to experience that.
I wonder how much though.
And the Bible will not let him.
But you were born into an American culture
Right.
that
Yes.
has that. So do you think that's the same thing as the Christian culture? You know, you're born into a family and you expect these things. So you're defining relationship by romantics. I mean, it's like the prototypical Italian, you know, like I don't want to get married, but my mom is going to kill me if I don't get married. You know, like she thinks she's defining happiness. I think you're being presumptuous.
I feel like I'm still digging deep, but I mean, isn't marriage highlighted in the Bible and committing yourself to a woman highlighted in the Bible?
But there's a higher calling that Paul talks about. And the higher calling is fulfilling your drive to be one with the Creator. And that's actually higher than a mere human relation.
Wait, I know what he's going to say about Paul, though.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm reading his mind. Okay.
Somebody's my dude, so I'm just going to go.
George is going to say, are you talking about the same Paul that does not want to see women's hair? Or does not want women to speak, or wants women to stay outside of the temple to pray.
I mean, if I got pushed in the right corner, I probably would have went that route. At some point, you're right.
So, new Mike, Orthodoxy help. What's your kind of Orthodox view on this?
So, the Orthodox view would be, we're not going to marry gays within the church.
Sad.
But what I do want to say is, I think it's great that you're questioning.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's great that you're comfortable enough to be open with your questions. And I think the fact that you care enough to argue against something shows something to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike.
I think the fact that you are as open and vulnerable about your questions is going to lead to a deeper faith if you hopefully get there. Because I think if you didn't care, you wouldn't be asking these types of questions. These are questions of someone that wants to actually know somebody. It's like when you get into a relationship with someone, if you're going to marry them, you should absolutely ask the hard questions. You shouldn't just accept it on face value. And I think your questions are powerful. I think they're well thought out. I respect anybody that questions. I respect anybody that brings these questions because it shows, it's not apathy. It's absolutely a quest to understand.
Yeah.
And I think that if at some point that spark in you that's driving you to ask questions, work with that.
Yeah.
And I've just met you maybe an hour and 40 minutes ago, so I apologize.
That's all right. No, man, that's great. You've had smart stuff to say all night.
But absolutely run with these questions. Bring them to people. Question, ask. Because once the core of these questions gets satisfied, everything else will probably fall into place. And I would be comfortable to say that God loves the fact that we ask questions. Yeah. God loves the fact when we yell at him, when we don't understand, when we try to, because it shows that you care. Because, I mean, the Bible is full of people that didn't understand. Right. The Bible is the one holy text in the world where God took failures and made something out of them. Joseph was quintessentially a failure. He was young, he was bragging, his brothers threw him in a pit, they sold him off, and all of a sudden, he was able to turn it around. You see Rahab, you see, all these stories of people that questioned God. So what you're doing in questioning is quite biblical. You're actually following a path of faith that if you get there, it's going to lead to something that I think is amazing. And you're not just taking in the narrative of how you were raised. Yeah. You're asking adult questions and you're looking for an adult answer, and I think that's fabulous. So I just want to say I respect you for asking these questions, because they're the same ones I ask, and I still ask sometimes. Anybody that says they don't ask these questions, I don't think is mature enough to really start grappling with God, because there are things that aren't going to make sense. Everyone should have moments where they get on their knees and they say, God, I just did it a couple days ago. I did it this morning. I don't understand why God's doing things in my life. I have no idea. It makes no sense. But I'm willing to say, God, I don't understand. But as long as I seek after trying to understand, I think that's good enough. I think that pleases God. So,
well said.
I think it's great.
That was excellent.
Yeah, well said.
It's a safe place, George.
Thank you.
We're a safe place, man.
Right. And it's not like we're on YouTube or anything, right?
Yeah, we're not live. We're not live on the internet or anything.
Yeah, it's not like the whole world's watching.
You're not a couple beers deep, just questioning your spirituality with anybody or anything. Yeah.
I did find that C.S. Lewis quote.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it says, perhaps a modern man can understand the Christian idea best if he takes it in connection with evolution. Everyone now knows about evolution. Everyone has been told that man has evolved from lower types of life. Consequently, people often wonder what is the next step? What is the next thing beyond man going to appear? Imaginative writers try sometimes to picture this next step, the Superman as they call him. But they usually only succeed picturing him with a deal nastier than man, as we know him, and then try to make him up for by sticking extra legs or arms on him. But suppose the next step was to be something even more different than the earlier steps than they ever dreamed of. And it is not very likely to be. The thousands of centuries ago, huge, very heavily armored creatures were evolved. If anyone had at that time been watching the course of evolution, he would probably have expected that it was going to be a lot heavier and heavier armor. But he would have been wrong. The future had a card up its sleeve which nothing at that time had led him to expect. It was going to spring on him little, naked, unarmored animals which had bigger brains. And with those brains, they were going to master the whole planet. They were not merely going to have more power than the prehistoric monsters, they were going to have a new kind of power. The next step was not only going to be different, but different with a new kind of difference. The stream of evolution was not going to flow in the direction in which he saw it flowing. It was in fact going to take a sharp bend. Now it seems to me that most of the popular guesses at the next step are making just the same sort of mistake. Perhaps see, or at any rate they think they see, men developing grand brains and getting greater mastery over nature. And because they think the stream is flowing in that direction, they imagine it will go through in that direction. But I cannot help thinking that the next step will be really new. It will not go off in a direction you could never have imagined. It would hardly be worth calling a new step unless it did. I expect that not merely difference, but a new kind of difference.
Oh.
I should expect not merely a change, but a new stage in evolution, not a stage in evolution at all. Should expect that evolution itself as a method of production, change would be superseded. And finally, I should not be surprised when the kind happened. Very few people noticed that it would happen. Now, if you take care to talk in these terms, the Christian's view is precisely that next step has already appeared. It is really new. It is not a change from brainier men to brainier men. It is a change that goes off in a totally different direction. A change from being creatures of God to being sons of God. So, I love C.S. Lewis. And it makes sense. I mean, if you look at the theory of evolution, you went from, slime to very armored creatures to being brainy, naked, people, right? To becoming spiritual sons of God.
But then it was okay. So that was describing like essentially the theory of evolution.
Yeah,
right.
To spiritual beings.
To spiritual beings.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that not everyone in this room agrees with that concept. Is that?
Yeah. I know Gumby and I both
New Mike,
lean
old Mike?
towards theistic evolution, Mike.
No, I don't totally agree with, I mean, yes, philosophically, I think there's an evolution of going through discovery and becoming spiritual. And I know we are spiritual, but I don't think we evolved to be spiritual.
Okay.
Really, I think we were created as spiritual.
New Mike.
Yeah, I would say that we, I don't think that it's, I don't think, relationship in Christ would fall into an evolution category, because I don't think it's a natural process. I think it's a supernatural process. So I would have to maybe disagree with the great C.S. Lewis as humbly as I can.
You take it back, Mike. You take it back.
I will. I apologize.
Well, even there's even some theologists out there, or even some scientists. Gerald Schroeder is, and he's, mind you, he's a theist, but he's not even a Christian. Gerald Schroeder believes that man did evolve, but man wasn't man until there was the form of man in which God breathed himself into. And he goes into the Hebrew. I'm not going to go into the Hebrew because he actually is Jewish and I'm not. So I'm not going to dive into the Hebrew to delve through the verbiage. But he actually does go as far as showing when God breathed his spirit into humankind across the Torah. And I'm not going to do that, but it's fascinating to discover that even people from other Abrahamic religions show God breathing into the human form his spirit of life.
Mike, let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
In the evangelical world or the charismatic world or even dispensationalist world, the whole concept of theosis seems so foreign to us, to me.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Can you unpack that a bit and tell us what we're missing?
Well, I think what's funny is some of my friends that are evangelicals absolutely get what I'm saying with theosis. Sometimes I think theosis is easier for the more charismatic or almost the more Pentecostal churches than it is some of my Roman Catholic friends. I think the idea is, it's kind of like the Trinity. Its simplicity is complex, and its complexity is where it's simple. So the idea of theosis simply is this process of allowing God to work within us. It's nothing that so all of you, you're all married? Yes?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. What was it? How did you fall in love with the person?
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh. My wife was so hot when I first met her.
You are totally putting us in the spot right now.
Yeah, right.
You are totally.
Okay, do we have to be in love?
Yeah, maybe. You know what? Everything I was talking about, scrap that.
You just put all of us on the spot.
What I'm saying is, there was a moment where you met the person.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
There was a moment where you started asking questions. You wanted to understand them. Right? And then there's this moment where you have to sit back with them and you're just silent. You're silent and you allow the love actually grows between you. And you can't, the reason we have evil is because we have free will, and we have free will because God can't force us to love him. It wouldn't be love that way.
Right.
So theosis is very much the divine relationship between us and God. It's nothing we can force. You can't kind of grunt your way through it. You can't do sanchin like in old karate. You have to sit back and you have to ask God and you have to pray and you have to be still. And I think that's the hardest part. I think, there's that old joke that says if you talk to God, you're a saint. If God talks to you, you're psychotic. And
I like that.
I think it's very much like if you guys have ever held, I've got 3 amazing kids. And sometimes when they're sad, and even my friends that have been, gone through hard things, the last thing they need you to do is talk. Sometimes you just need to shut up and be present with them. When my kids are sad, you just hold them. And they cry and they snot bubble on you, and it's okay because you're just holding them. And if you were to try to say something in that moment, you would probably ruin the moment. Mm-hmm. But you allow it to happen, and then at the other end of that space, the love between you is so much deeper than anything you could have said or do. And I think that's kind of how theosis is. It's this recognition that God and I are more united than I understand. And that the more I talk, because they'll pray and they'll ask God, and then they just kind of go, all right, thanks, and they kind of leave. And I think it's this true understanding that prayer has to be a relationship. And we talk too much when we pray. We need to be silent. We need to allow God to speak to us. And sometimes that speaking isn't verbal. It's a relationship. And the relationship has to be silent. Have you ever if you ever had a fight with your spouse or something, when you're just sitting in the room and you look at him and all of a sudden you have all these emotions just by looking at him and you don't say anything. It's very much like that. And I think theosis is on a mystical level like that, because I think we're mystical beings in a sense. So it's allowing God to work within us. It's allowing us in our ego and I mean that not in a Freudian sense, but almost in an I sense, allowing that to kind of go down so Christ can be raised up within me. And we have to be quiet. We have to sit back. And those questions that that our friend is asking are so important to this process. And I think the other part is to sit there and ask the questions, try to get the answers, and then just be still and know that He's God.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah. Very well said.
Thanks.
But your evangelical friends knew of theosis.
Some of them did, yeah.
I'm a bit envious about that. That was a concept never preached or taught to me, or certainly promoted. And so probably Aaron. And so we kind of went on our own journey.
Yeah, theosis. It's really neat because it's a spirituality where you allow God to do the work. And I think so often we think salvation and the spiritual life is us doing the work. And it shouldn't be us doing the work. We should enter into it and say, God, I love you. Come into my life, and then sit back and go, okay, I'm going to focus on you, God, and just let it happen. You can't force these things. It's like being in a river. You can't force the water to go another way. You just let it happen. So.
No, that's good. That's actually really good. It's as some people know, this podcast was actually started out of our Bible study, because we asked so many questions that we came up with really good topics, and so it led to a podcast.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it was launched as a roundtable because everybody brings something very good to the table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, and Mike is really awesome when he speaks, because he sits there and thinks and thinks and thinks, and so whenever he opens his mouth, it comes out as something that's awesome to be said. Yeah. But it's it was just a lot of cool stuff, and it's been funny because I think we predominantly all come out of outside of George.
My bad.
I think we all come out of a predominantly evangelical background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my youth was spent as Roman Catholic, but I mean, by the time I was 8 years old, we were in the assemblies and everything else. So we come out of that side of it. That's where me and Gumby, and I think to a degree, Mike, also can associate.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, Grace Church has that evangelical flair to it. So
spin. Yeah.
We do. Probably more to the conservative side.
Yeah. I would agree.
Not, you don't hear a lot of tongues or.
I think we've gone more. I think about 10 years ago.
We've had our seasons. Yeah. But Orthodox Mike, if I may, you brought up a great point with just George being able to even ask these questions as a part of our journey to faith and to whatever our relationship to God may look like for us. And it's such a huge point to make, because growing up in the church is whatever my background or denomination may have been, not knowing that it's a safe place for you to ask any question, it's huge to development and growth. I wasn't allowed to do it, and so whatever the moment was for me personally that broke me, that allowed me to have that, man, I wish it came earlier.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, and it's huge.
Well, I think it's almost half of the Psalms, maybe 2/3 of the Psalms, that are questioning God's authority, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. I mean, even some of the most well-known Psalms are like, God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Like Orthodox Mike said, it's a biblical thing. It really is. So, in your efforts to be non-biblical, you're being biblical. So, Mike, are you Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox? What is
Serbian?
Serbian. Okay.
Now I love this. So Mike,
Yes.
what is the difference
Between
like Russian Orthodox and Romanian Orthodox and Greek Orthodox and
Sure. So you will have a little difference in the theology. The Greeks will have a somewhat of a different theology than the Russians. You know, the OCA Church would have different than the Rokor Church. And when I say a little bit of a difference, I'm talking basically in like, you know, we follow the old calendar. You know, the Greek Church would follow the new calendar. Essentially, each of the Orthodox churches grew up in its own national church. So the main difference is just what country it happened to be from.
Okay.
so it's dialect.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. And also, I mean, and just like any church, it's gonna come up through the culture. So the Russian church will have a Russian flair, the Greek church will have a Greek flair. That's just naturally gonna happen. But yeah, that's essentially the difference. You're gonna have just whatever country they happen to be in. They use their language, so you didn't have, like, you would have the Latin Mass in all the other countries. You would speak Russian in the Russian church, the Greek in the Greek church. In the United States, it's an anomaly because you could have, you know, like in New York City, you could have like 4 cathedrals within like 5 blocks of each other.
Right.
You know, in Serbia, you have the Serbian Orthodox Church. You don't have the Greek Church next to the Russian Church, next to the OCA Church. I mean, I have 5 St. George's in Canton. We have the Antiochian, the Romanian Orthodox, the Byzantine, and then there's the Greek Church in Massillon. I think there's like 4 or 5 St. George's, and they all answer to a different bishop.
I'm almost jealous.
Yeah.
That's cool though. That's cool. I mean, it's cool that the fact that different cultures don't have to conform to somebody else's culture to get their service.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's actually really cool. I mean, if you think about it, I've had jobs, like, for example, I worked for a while at the West Side Market, and there's people there that don't speak very good English. Like, by a large margin, there's a lot of people that don't speak very good English. So it's cool that different branches can conform to the people that are coming over, you know, so that the Romanians, and I know several Romanians, who don't speak very good English can go to a service and hear the service in their own tongue, you know?
Right.
So,
and it ties to the idea of theosis. So, you know, the church is going to illuminate wherever it happens to be. So if they're going to illuminate Romanian people, they would do it within the Romanian culture.
yeah. Yeah, and that's fascinating to me, that you know, right within, well, even in Tremont over here, we have, I think 3 Orthodox churches. So you have
There is a St. George there.
Yeah, there is.
There's always a St. George somewhere, whatever the
Right? I think I posted a picture of me by it.
Right there, you
Facebook,
go. Yep,
of course, yeah.
And there's also an Antiochian church over there, and there's also St. Theodosius. Yeah, so it is. But if you look
What's
at
the church we go to for Thanksgiving? That was
that was a pilgrim church. That was just
pilgrim.
yeah, that was actually a Reformation church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's which, as I went over earlier, would have been birthed out of the Methodist churches. So it's Wesleyan.
Oh, of course.
There you go. See, comes full circle.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I love the fact that they're able to bring all the branches, and you know, it's America, right? It's a melting pot, so
Right.
It's a little unique in that
Sure.
aspect, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So now I have a few going into Christmas. I have a few things to go over because we are entering the holiday season.
This is one subject I actually know. So I'm ready.
All right.
Orthodox
Awesome.
Mike, be ready for some questions.
So, in the Christmas ideologies, there is this standing stigma that it's predominantly pagan.
Right,
with-
and that's why Jehovah's Witnesses don't practice it.
Well, yeah, there is that. There is
Okay.
that. Okay, there is that. I don't think that, but there is this preceding idea that Christianity, especially amongst the newer branches of the Reformation, especially across like the Hebrew roots and stuff like that, where they really veer away from this stuff because they believe it's so heavily pagan influenced.
Right? And
So,
no, go ahead.
no, you were saying, go ahead.
I don't have it. I mean, isn't like Jehovah's Witnesses like they kind of have this claim to fame that I'm gonna be wrong here, so go ahead and feel free to correct me. But I feel like they have this claim to fame that their view is more precisely accurate and interpreted, so that's why they do things as strictly as they do, including not celebrating Christmas because of its pagan background.
Right.
So are you arguing that it doesn't have those pagan backgrounds and that's why you continue to celebrate Christmas?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, Aaron.
talking.
Yeah, Aaron.
Right.
Aaron.
I mean, coming.
Have I ever called you Aaron? Did I just call you Aaron now?
You did. That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's the beer talking. I don't think
That's-
I've ever called you Aaron
I
before.
actually don't
it's
like.
because everyone else said I hated it.
I actually don't like that.
I'm
I don't
mad
like
at
that at
myself.
all.
Yeah, Juice,
I don't
my
like that
bad.
at all.
Only because
I
it's
hated it.
It's
I
only
hate
because it's
myself.
in the Bible.
It was in the Bible. I called him Aaron.
No, you mean the branch of the church that was founded by Charles Taz Russell, who didn't actually know Greek to reinterpret the Bible that he reinterpreted?
I had to plead the fifth, you know.
Okay. So, there was a trial held across Europe about that, right? And they called him out, on that, and then put a very small verse in Greek in front of him, and he couldn't read it.
That's funny.
These guys are like fighting
Right,
with
right.
cotton balls
Right.
on their hands.
So-
okay.
I'm just referencing this guy who reinterpreted the Bible without knowing Greek, right?
Oh.
Okay.
I didn't-
Okay.
I see.
So-
I see. That's interesting. I did not know that. Good.
So, but there is this idea, right, that the church pulls from Christianity and polemically put Christianity on top of paganism to bring in people for converts. I'm going to quote here from history.com. It says that the middle of winter has long been a time of celebration around the world, centuries before the arrival of the man called Jesus. Early Europeans celebrated light and birth in the darkest days of winter. Many people rejoiced during the winter solstice when the worst of the winter was behind them and they could look forward to longer days and extending hours of sunlight. In Scandinavia, the Norse celebrated Yule from December 21st, the winter solstice, through January. In recognition of the return of the sun, fathers and sons would bring home large logs, which they would set on fire. The people would feast until the log burned out, which could take as many as 12 days. The Norse believed that each spark from the fire represented a new pig or calf that would be born during the coming year. The end of December was a perfect time for celebration in most areas of Europe. At that time of the year, most cattle were slaughtered, so they would not have to be fed during the winter. For many, it was the only time of the year they had a supply of fresh meat. In addition, the most wine and beer made during the year is finally fermented and ready for drinking. In Germany, people honored the pagan god Odin during the midwinter holiday. Germans were terrified of Odin, as they believed he made nocturnal flights through the sky to observe his people and then decide who would prosper or perish. Because of his presence, many people chose to stay inside. So, right there, you have Europe going over different, arguably pagan ideologies, okay? And on the surface, it sounds very pagan, right? Mike, thoughts?
Christmas itself is strictly celebrating the birth of Christ, so that is not pagan in any way.
I know, but isn't that not the true? I would say Jehovah's Witnesses would argue that that's not the true birth date of Christ.
Well, Jehovah's Witnesses don't really believe Christ is God.
good
Okay,
point,
so when
good
is his
point.
birthday? Is his birthday December 25th or no?
No, September.
So why is that his birthday?
Well, it's a day we celebrate.
It's funny you say that.
So why wouldn't we celebrate his birthday on his birthday?
Well, so my answer...
Orthodox Mike.
Yes.
Why don't
George
we,
doesn't
why don't
care
we
about my
celebrate his
answer, and I'm
birthday?
offended.
Sorry, original Mike.
Way to interrupt.
Oh! No.
I'm just kidding. But short answer, yeah, I want to celebrate my Savior's birth, and that's what I use Christmas for. I do believe there's a lot of pagan undertones in the way we celebrate, but I thought before Wikipedia came around and you get to read the history, I just thought it was paganized throughout the year with socialism, like commercialism, and
Right.
and kind of Jesus was then taken out of Christmas, and then I've been introduced to the thought later that because of persecutions, Christians kind of hid behind some other holidays in December to kind of still celebrate.
So is December kind of more cultural for us?
Yeah. We agreed on the date. It's the date, but it doesn't have any actual, like, if Jesus was born in January, to me, I'm celebrating him once a year. It doesn't lessen. It's not like he's like, dang it, Mike, you missed my birthday again. It wasn't really this day.
Yeah.
Can I put a slight spin on this? I'm not going to quote the whole thing. I'm going to simply summarize it in this. There was a difference between the Western and Eastern Church and between the Gregorian and Julian calendar. So the easy way to settle it was on December 25th. Now, to disseminate from all those ideas that it was paganized, and I will in this podcast episode, I will link a very good scholarly article that shows you the evidences for this. There is no evidence that it was linked to a pagan holiday. None.
What happened to Missler?
What happened to watching Odin fly over the sky just now?
Was it on December 25th?
I don't know. It was at the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there actually is nothing on December 25th that predates Christianity to say that it was paganized by Christianity. Believe it or not, it was a 17th century Reformation scholar that wanted to part ways with the Catholic Church that created that idea.
Are you talking about Luther?
No, it wasn't Luther. It was later, 17th century. It was later. Yeah. So I'll link that article inside this podcast episode. I'm not going to go over all the details right now because, as George can see at the moment, it's lengthy. So,
What's the Orthodox view on?
Well, the old calendar, so ours is in January 7th.
What's January 7th? Jesus' birthday?
wow.
What's January 7th?
That's when we celebrate the Nativity. We don't celebrate Christ's Mass. It's the Nativity. But yeah, Jesus' birthday, yeah.
So December 25th, that morning in your home, what does it look like?
Well, this year it's going to be kind of quiet. But we kind of have to do both. Because my wife is Byzantine Catholic, so the boys will do the Christmas with her, and then they'll come over with me on the 7th, and we'll do a little something and go to church with me probably. So.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool. That is cool. And it's cool to get the exposure of both cultures.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and now I'll point out that the Byzantines actually hold still to the Eastern theology. I was doing a service call because we know that those who listen to the podcast know that I work for a telecommunications company. Okay, and I was doing a service call for a Melkite church over in Brooklyn, Ohio. And he was very, very implicit in stating that even though they are in communication with the Roman Catholic Church, that they are definitely Eastern theology. So
yes, the word Catholic just means universal. So you have, I think it's 22 or 23 different Catholic churches under the Pope. So that's why they always say the Latin Rite or the Roman Rite. It's one of the 22 Catholic churches. So when people say, do Catholics have married priests? Like, absolutely. My kid's godfather is a married Catholic priest and lives down the street. He's married with a couple kids. He's awesome. So I think, even the idea of what does it mean to be Catholic, people have kind of pigeonholed to be Roman Catholic because they're like 90% of the entire church. But yeah, there's a lot of different versions of Catholic that are still under the Pope. So.
Yeah. So, right? Do you ever know that?
I did not know.
Right. So there's
my kids' godparents, my three kids, Alex, John, and Raisa, their godfather is a Catholic priest who does Catholic confession at Walsh University sometimes, and his wife is their godmother, and full Catholic priest, and all the faculties and everything, and under the Pope and everything. So it's cool.
Yeah, your Instagram feed is adorable, by the way.
Yeah, when I had social media, I took a little nap. I took a fast from it, we'll say.
I love seeing all of your kids and all their services and all the things they go to.
Thank you. Yeah,
you've got a great feed.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So awesome. Yeah, but I'll post that. I'll post that article on there. It's fascinating to see that modern churches and modern scholars will impose a paganistic view on it. But really, culturally, going all the way through the Old Testament to the New Testament, polemically, that was what took place. Polemically, every time a culture took over another culture, they would use the previous culture's ideas and stories to convey through their own ideas and ideologies what they were bringing to that culture. And that is throughout the Old Testament, even all the way up into the New Testament. So, I mean, you even in the New Testament, you have the Baal cycle, right? The Baal cycle is even reflected when Christ says that he is coming on the clouds, because he is reflecting himself in the Baal cycle as the cloud rider. So, even from the Old Testament to the New Testament, you still have the polemics. So, it's fascinating. Well, just like, okay, for example, Paul at the Areopagus. When he walks in, how many scriptures did he spout out at all the other parishioners at the Areopagus?
10.
None.
Oh.
Why would he? They didn't know the Old Testament. Why would he spew Jewish Testament at them if they didn't know it?
I should know by your questions by now that the answer is none.
Or zero.
That's a good note.
Who did he quote?
No one.
He quoted their playwrights. He quoted their playwrights, and he quoted their philosophers.
You're right.
He quoted, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because they wouldn't understand if he was spewing out Jewish literature. Why would he tell them about Jewish literature if they didn't understand Jewish literature? He used their playwrights and their philosophers to convey his stories. So, I mean, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, you have polemics being used to teach other cultures. So, you have that dating all the way back to Genesis.
Right?
So, yeah.
If there's ever like a new happening of that, I want it all like directed and by Michael Bay. Telling the stories for the next generation. Exactly.
Lots of explosions and Megan Fox. This has been a great podcast.
So.
Orthodox Michael.
Yes.
Do you have any last words?
No, it's just it's been an honor. It's great to meet you guys, and I wish you well.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Orthodox Mike, you're
other
awesome.
Mike, anything?
No, I've been very educational.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, Mike.
I'm good. I'm sorry if I was a little too talkative today.
No, you're
so
great.
I apologize.
You're great. It was fun.
I blame Mike
fun.
and the two 10% beers that he got. And
Although they were wonderful, the
They were good.
flavor was amazing.
No training wheels here. We get what we think is going to be the best, and it's holiday season. I had to get the holiday beers.
Right, all right.
Right on.
Dude, they were phenomenal.
Though I might need training wheels to get home. But
Right.
Oh, really? we don't have to fill these cups, right?
I know, and I didn't have to race you. If you guys look at the Facebook page, I took a picture, and I was like first to finish, and I was trying to beat you.
Oh,
And then,
But see, I told him to only pour this much in mine.
he did. Oh, you didn't see that, did you?
No.
What, leave this much left in the growler? Okay.
Oh,
I actually discovered going to these places, and for our audience, is a good tip. You can go to these places and ask for flight sizes.
yes.
And
the flights are great.
Yeah, so you don't actually have to sit down and just,
Yeah.
get toasty or anything.
Well, Gumby and I we went down to like Mastheads the one time.
Yeah.
We just ordered 2 flats, and that was it. I think just 2 flats, and just to taste the beers.
Yeah.
And they're only like a little 4 to 6 ounces each.
Yeah, but when you got like 8 to 10 on each.
Right, those will
Well,
still
you
get
know.
you.